Right now, Stamps.com has a special offer that includes a 4-week trial, plus postage and a digital scale without long-term commitments. Go to Stamps.com, click on the mic, top of the homepage, type in Colin. That's Stamps.com, enter Colin. Stamps.com. Never go to the post office again.
This is The Herd. Wherever you may be and however you may be listening, live in Burbank, baby. Next 3 days, no TV, iHeartRadio, Fox Sports Radio, Sirius XM Channel 83. So glad to be back. I don't get many of these days anymore. It's all about glamour, TV, hair people, nice shirts. Today it's flip-flops. If I was a hat-on backwards guy, today would be a hat-on backwards day. We are packed today. I love doing these shows. I've already knocked down an egg and ham sando this morning. Had my green shake in Burbank, California, as I look out at another fascinating office building. It's good to have you here. So I was thinking about this morning. I was driving to work. I had to drive a little longer to work this morning. Burbank's about 10 more miles from my house. Again, charming little vista here. And pretty obvious the Lakers are copying Golden State. They hired their head coach, Luke Walton, from Golden State. The Lakers gave their GM job to an agent, like Bob Myers, GM at Golden State was. They're heavy on youth and threes, like Golden State. And yesterday, the Lakers turned to a Laker great to assist in the rebuild, Magic Johnson. Golden State brought in Jerry West, former Laker great. Let me give the Lakers credit. At least they're copying the right people. I've always said this about college sports. If you're going to cheat in recruiting, at least win. I remember years ago, Pacific Basketball got caught cheating. I'm like, God, you're crappy cheaters. You cheat and still lose. At least Tark won. At least those SEC teams that are paying for offensive tackles win. Copying gets knocked, and I've never quite figured it out. There's a guy in Hollywood now named J.J. Abrams. He's built a career pretty much duplicating Steven Spielberg. Rebooted Star Wars, rebooted Star Trek. He's doing real well. McDonald's did not invent the burger. Right now, Golden State is the leading culture in the league. LeBron and Cleveland are copying it. Cleveland 2 years ago started shooting a lot of threes. Get a J.R. Smith, get a Channing Frye, Telemon Shumpert, just shoot threes. Kevin Love, forget the rebounding, go shoot threes. Who do you think they were following? Golden State. By the way, Cleveland now, last couple of years, resting starters. Who did that? Greg Popovich, San Antonio. Copying works. Why is it less brilliant to take an idea that's perhaps underdeveloped and perfect it? That's what Mark Zuckerberg did with Facebook. The Winklevoss twins' idea, Zuckerberg took it, improved it, perfected it, bingo. I don't see what's the negative there. The Atlanta Falcons are basically a melting pot of two NFL cultures, the two best, Seattle and New England. So the Atlanta Falcons hired Dan Quinn. He's Pete Carroll's defensive whiz. And they said, we like your culture in Seattle. Bring that high-volume, high-energy culture to Atlanta. And then they filled their front office with New England Patriot guys. So the Atlanta Falcons are a combination of Pete Carroll's culture in Seattle and Bob Kraft and Bill Belichick's culture in New England. And they just got to a Super Bowl. By the way, San Francisco, the 49ers, who are the two guys they wanted for the job? Kyle Shanahan from the Atlanta culture and Josh McDaniels from the New England culture. You do realize David Letterman was just perfecting Steve Allen's bits. At least the Lakers are copying the right team. There's a new company out there called Lyft. It's Uber with tips. It's Uber with a pink mustache. So I said this yesterday. I think the Lakers don't know what the hell they're doing. And I think they've been, for the last several years, all over the map. Can't even figure out their coaching. but I will give them credit. They're copying the right people. Like if you're a comic and you're going to follow somebody's path, pick Louis C.K., not Carrot Top. I'll give you credit for that. If you're a young comic and you're looking for sort of a mentor, Louis C.K.'s act is going to last a long time, the way he does comedy. Props. Here's a mud flap and a toilet seat and a ski mask. Doesn't feel like it'll work in 30 years. Let me segue to this. I like Jeannie Buss. No Jeannie Buss. Not going to lie, she said I was a lot more handsome since I came to Fox. It's one of the reasons I like her. I mean, she's happy with Phil. Although if she wants to dump that loser, I mean, come on, that guy went to New York with the Knicks. Phil, not nearly as attractive. Oh, it did end. Yeah, well, don't blame her. I look better and Phil's gone into the tank. The point being, Jeannie basically turned to Magic Johnson. And I said yesterday, I'm not into this star-studded stuff. Kobe, agents, Magic Johnson. But let me just offer this, in fairness. Joe Dumars, Jerry West, Larry Bird, Danny Ainge, and Pat Riley played and succeeded in executive offices in the NBA. You don't see that in baseball. How many baseball stars? No, it's Theo Epstein. You don't see that in the NFL. How many quarterbacks outside of Elway do it? And nobody. The NBA of all sports, let's be honest, it's a small roster. It's a lot less legwork. You don't have honestly, baseball, you're choosing from 9 different countries. You got language barriers. You got layered minor league systems. In the NFL, your roster's 55, then a scout team. In the NBA, 15 dudes, 2 matter. So you got to get a cap guy, and then you got to get a GM to do the legwork. And in the NBA, Mitch Kupchak was terrific with the draft, but because he has a fairly wooden personality, he wasn't great with the free agent stuff, right? Danny Ainge is the opposite. Danny Ainge was good getting free agents. Isaiah Thomas trade, KG, Ray Allen. Danny Ainge, though, he wasn't very good with the draft. Think about this. I'm going to name draft picks that Danny Ainge has picked. And Danny Ainge has worked. He rebuilt the Celtics, won a title, and he's rebuilding them again. He is seen as a success. Danny Ainge is seen as a success. Let me list some of Danny Ainge's draft picks. I can't pronounce about 8 of them. Marshawn Brooks, Etwan Moore, Lester Hudson, J.R. Giddens, Gabe Pruitt, a lot of Chris Josephs, Luke Herringody. Jared Sullinger wasn't nearly as good. You want me to keep going? Orion Green, Justin Reed, Troy Bell. Get my point? You can whiff on draft picks. If Magic Johnson could land Paul George, one guy, successful. Like, I wouldn't make Magic my guy. I wouldn't hire an agent, Rob Pelinka, to be my GM. I wouldn't have Kobe on speed dial. I don't believe that's how you build a sports culture. But Danny Ainge inherited Paul Pierce, made a couple of good trades with Ray Allen and KG, butchered a bunch of draft picks. He was good in the room. If Magic could convince one free agent, one Paul George, Jimmy Butler, who would elevate all these young guys that Mitch Kupchak found, there you go. You know, I said this for years. At my former employer, the guy that hired me was named Mark Shapiro. Mark hired me like 12 years ago at my former employer. Mark created PTI. PTI makes about $50 million a year. So over a decade, it makes $500 million. He has built a $500 million decade show. It didn't matter that he failed on 6 others. Because at that company, if a show fails, you pull it off the air in 3 months, it costs you $2 million. So you could have 21 whiffs. If you have one hit, it works. In the NBA, you get Kyrie Irving or LeBron, you can whiff your next 7 draft picks. You think I'm wrong? Go look at Mitch Kupchak's draft picks. They've been fantastic. In 2014, Julius Randle, Jordan Clarkson. Clarkson, a 46th pick. 2 legit guys. Next year, D'Angelo Russell, Larry Nance Jr. Nance, 27th. 2 legit guys. Last year, Brandon Ingram and Ivica Zubac, 32nd pick. 2 good guys. 6 for 6. Didn't whiff. Found second-round guys. But he whiffed on Luol Deng. Danny Ainge is the reverse. Danny whiffed on all sorts of picks. But he got KG. He got Ray Allen. He makes a trade, Isaiah Thomas. He gets Al Horford. So the good news for Laker fans, Magic may be awful on the details. Magic may not have a clue about talent. Magic could whiff all over the board. But we have a history of NBA players succeeding in the front office where we don't have a long list of that in other sports. Because the NBA, especially today, is really all about landing the star. Danny Ainge has done it. Mitch Kupchak, much better with details, much more formidable in the draft, much fewer draft whiffs, almost none. Out of a job. Out of a job. Jeannie Buss talking about the move, a difficult move, yesterday to give Magic the reins of the operation.
This was a very difficult decision. It was probably so hard for me to make that I probably waited too long. And for that, I apologize to Laker fans.
I could make the argument that you had to have Magic because he had the power to get rid of Jim Buss. Jeannie continued.
You know, Laker values are so strong. The purple and gold standard really dictated that the status quo wasn't acceptable. You know, to go from 25 wins to 21 wins to 17 wins, to watch it erode like that. It wasn't Laker basketball. It wasn't what this organization stands for. And so it was time for a change.
Yeah, I still believe the people that run your franchise should not be known by one name. Drake, Bono, Edge, Kobe. I don't want icons running my franchise. But there is an argument to be made that if you can just land the star in this league, Calipari can make a lot of mistakes in Kentucky. But if he lands an Anthony Davis and a Karl Anthony Towns every other year, he's successful. It's a talent business. Very few people in the NBA are difference makers. I mean, ask yourself, I like Chris Paul. How many big playoff series wins does he have? Hell, they got Blake Griffin and Chris Paul. Anthony Davis, the next big star, never won a playoff game. Andrew Wiggins, Karl Anthony Towns, never been there. About 4 guys move the needle in this league. Can Magic land one? Because Mitch, by the way, he's inheriting a bunch of young Mitch guys. Can Magic land one? Takes one. Jimmy Butler changes everything. Paul George changes everything. Coming up next, the NBA is paralyzed by something, and it makes absolutely no sense because yesterday, another team did what the NBA hates, and the winner is you, the fans, and actually the winner is the league. Why are they paralyzed by it?
Hi, it's the Herd. Stamps save you time and money, which you can use to grow your business. I can mail any letter, any package, using a computer and printer, and the mailman picks it up. Avoid the hassle of the post office with Stamps.com and mail everything from postcards to envelopes to packages, domestic or international, from your printer. Create your Stamps account in minutes online, no equipment to lease, and no long-term commitments. Click, print, mail, and you're done. Stamps.com brings all the services of the U.S. Postal Service to your fingertips. You buy, you print, Official U.S. postage, any letter, any package, any class, using your computer and printer. Use Stamps.com. Right now, you too can enjoy the stamp service with a special offer that includes a month trial, 4 weeks, plus postage and a digital scale without long-term commitments. Go to Stamps.com, click on the mic, put in Colin. Stamps.com, enter Colin. Stamps.com. Never go to the post office again.
Welcome back. We're in Burbank. Let me give you the phone number because when we do these shows the next 3 days, the phone number changes up here in Burbank. It's 866-987-2570. If you're driving, that's too many numbers to remember. 866-987-2570. So I would take it that's the regular phone number for this station, right? All right. 866-987-2570. Take a few calls today. Got a good show. Chris Mannix coming up, senior writer of The Vertical. If you're wondering whether your shirt's too long to wear untucked, it probably is. Untuckit.com solved the problem. Go to untuckit.com. Use the code SPORTS, 15% off. Got a store now in L.A. on Melrose Avenue. So, some things in life aren't great, but I try not to be paralyzed by them. I'd prefer my kids don't smoke pot. But I'm not stupid. And I'm not going to follow them around the halls. I tell them it's not smart and it will shrink their tiny brains. And if you're going to be a Waken Baker, I'd prefer you never do it, but wait until you're 24. I don't want my kids to be potheads. And I don't think they will be. But I can't be paralyzed realizing they may go to a party someday and it could be there. My job as a parent to inform them drugs are bad. You start being the overly restrictive parent and your daughter ends up as a stripper and shows up on the Howard Stern show. You can overparent. You can overparent. The NBA is paralyzed by tanking. Man. So the NBA has set up all these obstacles to trading and all these obstacles to make sure a team doesn't tank. What's wrong with tanking? Suck for luck in Indianapolis. Bonded fans. It was great. Indianapolis benefited. I'm one of these that believes tanking's probably not something you should promote or encourage, but it's not the worst thing. The Lakers, by the way, yesterday just tanked. Did you notice? They sent their leading scorer, Lou Williams, to Houston for a guy that won't play much and a first-round pick. Gosh, why would you send your best scorer to somebody else? Duh. Because it assures the Lakers retain their top 3 lottery pick. For the people that don't know the way it's set up right now, the Lakers have a top 3 pick in the lottery if they're lousy. If not, it goes to somebody else. So why keep a guy, Lou Williams, who helps you win games? Lou Williams, Lakers' best scorer, he's a bench player. So the Lakers basically just did a form of tanking. They're going to lose a couple of games at the end of the year they could win with Lou Williams. Why? It's not about the draft pick. It's about retaining the top 3 pick. The Sixers have a roster now, which when Ben Simmons can play, is going to be very exciting. It's a major market. They went all in on tanking. I think the NBA worries too much about it. You can't stop it. The Lakers did it, Adam Silver, right in front of you. And don't be shocked if the Lakers, in the last 3 or 4 weeks, maybe play more young guys, lose, but get them experience, wink, wink, also known as losing on purpose. The NBA's biggest problem is the obstacles that make it next to impossible to pull off a trade. One of their big issues is not tanking. Tanking's been going on forever. It's how Cleveland got LeBron. And by the way, LeBron has just been one gift after another. He was great for Cleveland, then great for Miami. He's great for Cleveland. He's great for the league. Would it have been better if Cleveland didn't tank and he went to Toronto? He has been one of our leading commerce drivers in American sports. So as long as you tank with a purpose, Philadelphia had a purpose. I actually like letting Lou Williams go. His salary's now off the books. You will have 2 first-round picks now, a third, second, or first, a top 3 pick, and then that Houston pick. Corey Brewer's irrelevant. Because what Mitch Kupchak did, pretty good at drafting. 6 for his last 6, no ifs. Here's Goulet with the news.
No. Turn on the news. This is the Herd Line News.
That sounded weird, didn't it?
It really, you know what? You're the first person that's ever done it with a beard. I went.
Yes, that's true.
Christine to Jenny to a beard.
Jason McIntyre, no beard?
I wouldn't call it a
Fake
beard.
little part of one.
Yeah.
All right, so Sam Amick of the USA Today tweeted that Jim Buss and Mitch Kupchak actually made a push to trade for DeMarcus Cousins as kind of a final effort to save their jobs. Now, remember, the deal didn't go through because they wouldn't trade Brandon Ingram.
Yes.
Should Kupchak have kind of been more selfish and traded Ingram to save his own job?
Yeah, I'm glad you picked that up because I think what people are not realizing is that Mitch Kupchak could have made the deal, but he knew it wasn't good because it's like Jay Cutler's now in the market. Pass on Jay Cutler. He's the Boogie Cousins of the NFL. And I think in the end, Mitch Kupchak selflessly didn't make that deal. And in the end, it's better for the organization not to be tied to Boogie Cousins for 4 years.
Well, and reportedly, Jim Buss was very behind bringing in
because he
Boogie Cousins.
Selfishly wanted to keep his gig, whereas Mitch knows, unlike Jim, he can go get another NBA job.
Right. Sticking with the Lakers, former Lakers coach and your favorite, Byron Scott, is actually supportive of the Magic hire. No surprise because they're friends. And he said, this is what he said to TMZ last night. He's very high with his expectations.
I think 5 years down the road, I think this team is going to be right there playing for a championship again. And I think his role is going to be solidified. Again, he doesn't do this. He doesn't take this job lightly. You know, Magic is a winner, always has been a winner. So he's going to give it everything he's got.
I know you love the he's a winner defense. Now, considering a lot of this issue is actually at the fault of Byron Scott, is he wrong to be so optimistic?
Well, I mean, that doesn't mean anything to me. He's a winner. I mean, it's, by the way, he had a talk show host. It was a disaster. He was never a great NBA analyst. Not every business he's touched has been absolutely gold.
He was the coach at one point.
He was a coach. That didn't work. Magic's had a lot of failures, even in sports. So I got nothing against Magic. If he can get Paul George in town or Jimmy Butler, it's fine. I mean, Danny Ainge has had 2 or 3 deals that have worked and 16 draft picks that haven't. So, you know, if he can land one guy, then if he can get Paul George here, and Paul George grew up wanting to be Magic, and he can get Kobe to call Paul George and fly to Indianapolis or whatever, if they could do that, coupled with all Mitch Kupchak's draft picks that were pretty good, then they got a team.
And finally, ESPN is reporting that the Bears are looking for a trade partner to make a deal for Jay Cutler. Many are speculating that the 49ers are a likely destination because John Lynch was actually his teammate a long time ago. And remember, Kyle Shanahan's dad, Mike Shanahan, is who originally drafted Cutler. So does Cutler have anything to offer a team like the 49ers?
Headaches. Not even remotely interested. It goes back to yesterday. We talked about it's been established. Like, it's been established. Boogie Cousins is really talented but difficult. It's been established. I mean, Boogie Cousins was difficult in AAU, difficult in Kentucky, difficult in Sacramento. He's talented. Jay Cutler's talented, but I got no interest bringing that guy into my locker room. And by the way, again, Boogie's a star. If Boogie was a bad guy but a marginal player that didn't play, you could tolerate it, but he's a star. Jay Cutler's your quarterback. So if the worst attitude in the locker room is the most valuable position, I'm not interested whatsoever. Goulet with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Line News.
So we laid it out. If you go to the last 3 or 4 years, Mitch Kupchak was really good on draft picks. I mean, he found guys in the second round that can play. That's not easy to do in the NBA. But he has sort of a wooden personality. He wasn't good in the room. He didn't do well with free agents. Lou Aldang's a bad signing. And in the end, Danny Ainge, who's had a lot of draft picks that didn't work, but was good in the room and could get a KG and could get a Ray Allen and could get an Isaiah Thomas and could sell Al Horford, that makes him more viable. And is the NBA becoming all about just getting the star? You can whiff on some draft picks. Mitch did very well with draft picks. But he's not a salesman. Magic's a salesman. Chris Mannix is a senior writer at The Vertical, Yahoo Sports. They have a trade deadline show tomorrow at 2 Eastern on thevertical.com. Listen, I can detail a lot of Mitch Kupchak's work that was pretty darn good, Chris. Luol Deng it's not great. In the end, did the Luol Deng, did that alone cost him his gig?
I don't think that Luol alone cost him the gig. It's a combination of Deng, Timothy Mozgov is in that mix, and, frankly, a failure over the last couple of years of being able to bring in a marquee free agent. That being said, you can't argue that the Lakers are on the right path right now. They have two players that I think most people believe are going to be very good in Randall and Russell, and one player in Ingram who has a chance to be even better. And with that core, you at the very least have some clarity. And if you ask general managers what they want more than anything with their organization, it's clarity, it's direction. And the Lakers have that right now, which is not something you could have said the last couple of years.
Listen, I don't think somebody's Twitter account is everything, but I could tell before Donald Trump became president, it was troubling. Magic's Twitter account told me that Jimmer Fredette is the real deal and that Michael Carter-Williams would be the next Jason Kidd and that Rondo, Butler, and Wade would be a huge success. How much does Magic really know about NBA personnel? I know he can play. Is it possible here he's a figurehead?
Well, like the clips that I just heard on your show there of Magic being called a winner, I mean, who gives a damn? I mean, yeah, lots of guys are winners, but that doesn't make them great at this job. This job, the general manager, president, whatever position he wants to be in, it is a 24/7, 365 job.
Yes.
You have got to eat, drink, and sleep this. There is a reason, Colin, that the best GMs in basketball are guys that you couldn't identify in a lineup. It's Sam Presti, it's R.C. Buford, it's Masai Ujiri. These guys are workers. They spend probably 51 weeks a year on the job, globally, traveling everywhere. And Magic Johnson can hire all the people he wants underneath him. I think Rob Pelinka is a nice start. Ryan West is an assistant GM there. He's an up-and-comer at that position. But unless Magic is spending his time in the SEC, in the Big Ten, in the Pac-12, covering games, watching games, developing relationships with coaches, he is going to fail. I'm in New York. I'm watching Phil Jackson, who doesn't do that, fail. In Sacramento, Vlade Divac, who doesn't do that, is failing. You can be the greatest player ever, but unless you're at these games consistently and developing the relationships I talked about, you are not going to be good at this job.
Chris Mannix joining us. Trade deadline show tomorrow on thevertical.com. Okay, Rob Pelinka is Kobe's agent. Arn Tellem was his former agent. They were both up for this gig. Now, the Warriors go Bob Myers, GM, former agent. So at least the Lakers are copying the right franchise. They're not, they're not copying the Pelicans. They're copying the Warriors. What do I know about Rob Pelinka? Could I argue, well, what the Lakers need to do is land one star. Pelinka knows them all. Maybe it's not the worst move.
I don't think it's the worst move because, Rob is a very smart guy and a respected guy across the league. Now, I know that's kind of, cliche to some degree, but he knows the game. He's represented a lot of star players, and he knows young talent. I mean, he spends his time digging into the draft process and trying to identify who the next great stars are going to be. Now, he can't do it single-handedly, but he certainly is a good start. My question, though, with the Lakers, Colin, and this goes back to Magic. I mean, it's the Lakers and the Knicks who are just, rooted in this 1990s philosophy that we need to have a celebrity president or a celebrity general manager. When I talk to executives across the league, it befuddles them why the Lakers or the Knicks, with their $10+ million per year to offer for this position, don't go to a Presti or R.C. Buford or an Ujiri and say, how about I give this to you and total control of my franchise? Why is winning the press conference more important to these teams than actually winning games? I'm not saying they could get one of those GMs. It might be tough to extract them. but at the very least, make the offer and go from there. This is, maybe Magic can be successful, and Rob Pelinka certainly helps, but it strikes me as bizarre that these three elite general managers do not get approached by these teams.
It's real. I'm going to throw this at you, Chris. USC football finally went, because I believe Los Angeles provides the glamour. What you need is a workaholic. So the Dodgers, USC, let's get Lane Kiffin, let's get Sark. When they hired Clay Helton, a low-profile grinder, all of a sudden they hit. The Dodgers, it's not about Joe Torre. They get a Dave Roberts, a grinder, a baseball lifer. So I guess to your point is, you don't need to hire a star in L.A. The market provides the glamour. What I need to hire is a workaholic, a mason, brick after brick. I think you make a point. Like for instance, with Magic. Magic walks into a room and is always the most important viewed person in the room. But Magic has some failures in business too. I don't know Magic well enough. Do you have a gut instinct on how this would go?
There's mixed reviews around when you talk to NBA people about Magic and his willingness to work. Some people are just taking him at face value right now, saying, I'm ready to go. He was intimately involved. I mean, he did the deal with Lou Williams in Houston, and he was aggressively working the phones and has been working the phones over the last couple of days. And look, that's a great start, but not to kick the question down the road a little bit, but we're going to see in the next 6 months if Magic is out there. I mean, look, Pat Riley is the most, conspicuous person out on college campuses, but he's there all the time.
Yes.
Pat Riley is a grinder on a daily basis. If Magic does that, he has the smarts. He has the intelligence. You combine Magic's playing experience with a tireless work ethic, and you are going to get yourself a great executive. If he doesn't have that tireless work ethic, and if he's just, popping on the Pac-12 network, watching the NCAA tournament, going to the combine, you're still going to maybe hit on these top 2 or 3 picks. But teams that are successful, the Oklahoma Cities and the San Antonio, sustained success, they hit in the late 20s. They hit in the second round. And identifying those guys is just tireless work that we don't know yet if Magic's willing to put in.
Jimmy Butler, 40 seconds. Where do you think he ends up, or does he end up anywhere outside of Chicago?
Ignore for now, Colin, the white noise around the Bulls saying he's not available and Boston putting it out there. There's not sure how much they want to give up. This is going to come down to the last hours on Thursday. At some point, I really believe these two teams are going to engage each other and decide how far each one is going to go. Will Boston throw Jaylen Brown into a deal, and will Chicago accept a deal that maybe has some protections on that 2017 first-round pick? That's the one unknown. Everything up until, say, noon Eastern on Jimmy Butler is pretty much irrelevant. I think Boston and Chicago are going to stare each other down before then.
You know what? I'm one of the few, but I think Isaiah Thomas, Jimmy Butler, Al Horford, and Avery Bradley, that's a real team. Because I got to tell you, Chris, how many years can LeBron play these extra 20 playoff games without wearing down? I think he's getting close to wearing down eventually.
I completely agree, and you have to remember that Jimmy Butler has 2 more guaranteed years on his contract, and it is one of the most team-friendly contracts for any star player in basketball. You add Butler to that mix, you keep some of your assets, you are going to throw a scare into Cleveland this year, and you are in great position to overtake them next year.
I totally agree. Chris Mannix, senior writer at The Vertical. Let me give him one more pump here and grab the paper. Trade deadline show tomorrow at 2 Eastern on thevertical.com. Chris, I always appreciate you stopping by. I love your work.
Anytime, Colin. Appreciate it.
You bet. Coming up, uncomfortable moment for Coach Cal, or was it? Chris Mannix, good stuff. Nick Wright next hour. RJ Bell joins us. Tony Romo to the Washington Redskins. People are talking. Stuff's ending up on www.bandwidths.com. Stuff saying, I'm telling you, Tony Romo, my argument, I'm going to bring RJ Bell on pregame.com today for this. If Tony Romo went to Washington, if Tony Romo went to Kansas City, if Tony Romo went to the Houston Texans, totally changes the odds. That's my guess. J.J. Watt goes back to Houston, missed this year, doesn't do anything. Tony Romo's a complete game changer in this league. He's a 6-point-a-game game changer. J.J. Watt's not worth half a point. Gronk is worth maybe 1 point. And people are doubting Tony Romo. Tony Romo to your football team in Houston, you're co-favorites in the AFC after New England. Not even a question. Not even a question. Plus that division, I get Jacksonville twice, Indianapolis' roster twice. I still don't think Marcus Mariota's proven absolutely he's a star. I get Tennessee twice. You put Tony Romo in that division, if you can keep him upright, they win that thing going away. They were the number one defense without J.J. Watt. They got to the playoffs with that quarterback. They were a mess. So John Calipari, college basketball's only remaining rock star. Kentucky played Missouri last night. He's doing a halftime interview in a close game. Listen to not only Calipari, but listen to the student section behind him during this quick interview.
Coach, you expected Missouri to play with house money. How would you describe this first half?
They played well. I mean, they're playing well, and we're missing layups and dunks and free throws. I can't believe we're up one, but we'll see what we do in the second half.
How would you describe this student section here?
And he walked
All right,
off.
Adam.
7 years, one title, but I will say this. That moment, college basketball needs a lot more of that. Dickie V's about ready to retire. Coach K's got less than 5 or 6 years. Same with Boeheim. The players are now 18 years old. I mean, ask yourself. You got Grayson Allen at Duke. How many guys can you name that don't play for your favorite team? How many guys can you name in college basketball? Lonzo Ball, UCLA. Grayson Allen, Duke. A lot of revolving door stuff. So, to me, college football's got stars. Saban, Harbaugh, Leonard Fournette, Christian McCaffrey came into this season as stars. Deshaun Watson came into the season as a star. Sam Darnold, USC next year, will come into the season as a star. College basketball is star deficient. And Kentucky's the glamour program. You can't name 5 players. So I got to tell you, when I heard that audio, I didn't watch the game. My first takeaway was college basketball could use that every night. I mean, listen to this crowd. This is exactly what college basketball needs more of. Hate.
Coach, you expected Missouri to play with house money. How would you describe this first half?
They played well. I mean, they're playing well, and we're missing layups and dunks and free throws. I can't believe we're up one, but we'll see what we do in the second half.
How would you describe this student section here? All right, Adam.
He wouldn't. Don't waste your long weekend dealing with commissioned salespeople. Go to Casper.com. Put in the code HERD. That'll save you $75 on the purchase of your mattress and additional Casper products. Terms and conditions apply. Let me give the phone number again, because this phone number I'm going to use for today, tomorrow, and Friday. 866-987-2570. 866-987-2570. You pick up the rotary, dial us in. It's all good. John Goulet today is doing my updates. I know that's off-putting, but we're on radio, so you don't have to look at him.
Oh, now I see your plan.
I'm such a jerk. So yesterday I get home, and usually here's the way it works. I get home, open the door, family rushes to hug me and tell me how much they love me. And then I go upstairs and take a nap for like 20 minutes, get on the shorts, go work out, come back and just start drinking. So yesterday, I get home. I have no idea why. We have a new cat. So I grab the cat. I go upstairs, take the shoes off, lay down in the bed. When I go to bed at night, I sleep on my side. When I nap, I just lay down on my back. 10, 15 minutes later, right, get up. Wrong. 2 hours later, I wake up at 6:15. I'm like, God, I'm screwed. Now I'll never be able to go to sleep. So I went and ate dinner, and I told my wife, I have to go walking for 90 minutes. Otherwise, I'm not going to fall asleep. So I went for an hour and a half walk at like 9 o'clock last night. pitch black. Could have been robbed by hooligans. And I actually ran into Landry Fields, former New York Knick. So it was an eventful walk. I don't know what happened. Who takes a 2.5-hour nap in the middle of the day? It's just ridiculous. Look at this. Jay Cutler. So the story's out that Jay Cutler, a lot of teams are going to look at potentially signing Jay Cutler. Here's the thing. Years ago, you could be a jerk, and you could get away with it. You could snap your fingers at a waiter. But, social media, TMZ has killed a lot of that. There's too much transparency now. You get video of Boogie Cousins yelling at reporters. You get video of Jay Cutler pouting. You used to be able to do that stuff. Now, you apply for a job at my place, I go to your Twitter account and your Facebook account, and I'm like, oh, you're a putz. Like social media, TMZ have really hurt jerks. Jay Cutler's a jerk. Hour 2 next. This is The Herd. Wherever you may be and however you may be listening, live in beautiful Burbank, California. iHeartRadio, Fox Sports Radio, Sirius XM Channel 83. Boy, was Chris Mannix good. First hour, senior right of the vertical. It is great to have you in today. Doing radio only. I'll give you the phone number. And this phone number will be the number used today, tomorrow, and Friday. 866-987-2570. 866-987-2570. I was thinking about Magic Johnson getting hired yesterday. And, one of the things about, and I guess this is true in our business, it's true in a lot of business. Anybody out there listening that's in human resources? You interview somebody, got a good resume, got good references, they say all the right things, then you bring them in-house. They're doodling the secretary. That doesn't work. That wasn't on the resume. References didn't give you a heads up. Nothing led you to believe that during the HR interview. It's hard to figure out people, especially if you don't have the odometer. Didn't go to college with them. They're not in your social circle. The NBA is rough on its executives. It's very punitive. And now they have that one-and-done thing. So you get like 35 college games to guess if Andrew Wiggins will be great. Sometimes it's obvious, like with Andrew Wiggins. Then sometimes you watch that guy the Celtics drafted last year from Cal. Let's see, I've got 36 games. 4 times he played another NBA guy. They guarded each other for 9 times 4 games. I've got 36 ISOs, and here's my first pick. The NFL is not that punitive. I mean, take Pete Carroll. Take Pete Carroll's big moves. He paid Matt Flynn $10 million. Never paid him. James Carpenter, 2011 first-round offensive line pick. You remember that? They showed Nick Saban going, what? James Carpenter wasn't very good, and Nick knew it. He traded draft picks for Charlie Whitehurst. How about that second-round wide receiver, Paul Richardson? Boy, he's been a big hit, hasn't he? No. But the NFL allows you to be human. And the NFL, you get 3 and 4 years of tape. You'll see Sam Bradford by the time he comes out. You'll see him play Washington on the road, Penn State, UCLA, Notre Dame, Stanford a couple times. Got a lot of tape on him. Got high school tape, got college tape. Even then, the NFL's like, you missed a pick. It's okay. But in the NBA, you get like 30 games. And there's not a lot of NBA players in college, so you get a big at Ohio State, he may only face one other pro big in one game for 11 possessions. Now on the board, the Charlotte Hornets to make a pick. NBA's rough, and it's really punitive. Like if you make a deal, there's so many obstacles, they're so petrified of tanking, they make it hard to trade in the NBA. So I don't know if Magic Johnson's going to work, but I'll say this. Mitch Kupchak was a damn good drafter. He put the time in. He wasn't good in the room with free agents. And that Luol Deng contract and that Mozgov deal probably sealed his fate after 36 years. He used to have Jerry West in the room. He didn't have to be a bon vivant. He used to have Phil Jackson. He used to have Jerry Buss. Now he just had Jim Buss. And he's wooden. And they got Luol Deng. And he's out of work. The NBA's rough. And it's punitive. Looky here, Nick Wright's joining me in studio, FS1 NBA insider, all over the trade publications. Big things potentially happening, but let's not get into that. How are you?
I'm good. You know what you also don't have to worry about in the NFL that you do in the NBA?
What?
That, like, the next great quarterback happens to have been playing, like, in Poland against 16-year-olds. Like, that's what the guy that's going to be the best player in the league when LeBron's done being the best player is Giannis Antetokounmpo. And I butchered the last name, but I tried. And, I mean, how was he went 10th overall because he was playing 15-year-olds in Greece, and everyone's like, I don't know, what do we do? Is he – and now he's going to be amazing. Like, it's a little tougher.
And I also think the one-and-done culture, you have so many of the players are overseas. The quality is nebulous.
Yeah.
I mean, I lean on Doug Gottlieb, a buddy of mine who played overseas in Russia, and he played in Israel. You know, and I a lot of times I have 4 or 5 guys. I have 2 NBA scouts, and I'm like, okay, I'm watching, and I see that guy from Cal going to Boston. He's athletic.
You have no idea.
I've got no idea. Anthony Davis, we can all figure out. So you have a slight variation on Magic Johnson.
So here's the thing. I don't know that, Magic, people make fun of Magic's tweets, and rightfully so. Like, Magic doesn't seem to maybe have at least via his Twitter account, everyone's going to win a championship. Everyone's awesome. But here is what I do know. There are Fortune 500 CEOs. 5 of them are black guys. He's one of them. He is a guy that is one of the most successful black businessmen in the history of America.
9th richest African-American in America.
Right.
Like, he is he's a more successful business guy than a player.
Basketball player. And why does that matter? Today's NBA stars, your point was, you can whiff. If you get a star, it's all good.
Paul George.
Exactly. You get Paul George. You get Jimmy Butler. You get a star. You get someone to say, I want to come play with you. Though with the economics of today's NBA, those guys, all of them, are looking at finishing their basketball career with over $200 million in career earnings. Those guys, all of them, to a man, are looking to become the next mogul, the next empire builder. If I'm weighing between signing with the Rockets or the Lakers or the Atlanta Hawks, and I'm one of those guys, I'm like, man, I can get on Magic's inner circle. When I'm done playing, I can be one of his guys.
That's right.
That's the pitch if you're Magic. If you're the Lakers, it's, hey, we're Los Angeles. We're this great franchise. And, oh, yeah, by the way, for the creme de la creme, you can get on the inner circle of a billionaire mogul businessman.
And Magic, and you've been in L.A. for about 6-7 months, Magic is known in Los Angeles as being offended if you don't ask for his business advice.
Right.
He wants to help Blake Griffin.
Absolutely.
So Magic's very giving that way.
And so I understand that, like, all team owners are, billionaires, but it's different.
Yes.
When, you either built a company or you inherited it from your dad, or if it's like, Matt, if you're a player, you can be like, oh, it's 1-to-1. Great basketball player turned business mogul.
I could be that.
Would be my mentor.
Lakers going Warriors south. I said earlier today to start my show, if you're going to be a comic and you copy Louis C.K., it's not a terrible move.
Yeah.
Do you think
Isn't that what Dane Cook did? I think Dane Cook got in trouble for that. Yeah. I think you can copy what the Warriors are doing from a business standpoint, from a management standpoint. I think it's very dangerous to copy their style of basketball just because nobody else has a Steph, a Clay, and now a KD. Like, their style works because they have unique individual talents, but the management, listen, we're going to have an agent be our GM. We're going to have a former all-time great help run the whole thing. I think that's smart, and I think you're right that there is a strong argument to be made that more sports teams should simply say what works. Okay, let's try to build that and then tweak it.
Atlanta Falcons said Seattle, New England work. We're going to take Dan Quinn and all their front office guys, and it's worked.
It's unbelievable. In the NFL, like, people look at the Patriots, and somehow the one thing teams have decided I want to copy from the Patriots is not saying anything to the media, when that's the least important thing they do. Like, of all the great things the Patriots do, trading back in the draft, acquiring second and third rounders, not overpaying guys, not having loyalty to veterans that aren't necessarily still worth the money, teams are not copying the Patriots on that. They're like, but where we will copy the Patriots is our coach is going to give the worst press conferences ever.
So here's my thing on DeMarcus Cousins. I compare him to Jay Cutler. Is that TMZ and Facebook and Twitter now give me an opportunity to see things you could hide in your resume. I'm not acquiring Jay Cutler. I know what Jay Cutler is. And it would be one thing if he was an outside linebacker on special teams. He's a quarterback. It'd be one thing if Boogie Cousins was like the fourth guy off the bench, like Larry Nance Jr. But Boogie, if you inherit him, he's the best big in the league. I mean, Andre Drummond's good. He's not close.
Right.
So I'm okay with the Celtics saying, we're just not bringing him into this young roster. We're not doing it. Are you?
Okay, well, let me address Boogie real quick and then the Celtics. 19, Colin. That is the number of starting point guards, coaches, GMs, and owners that Boogie has had in Sacramento. 19 combined point guards, GMs, coaches, owners. So it would be hard for anyone to have a stable, upwardly mobile trajectory there. Now, he clearly doesn't have his emotions under control.
Sure.
He clearly, it seems to me, almost has like a persecution complex. Like he always thinks guys are against him. Nah, bro, you've done that to yourself to a degree. But the talent is so undeniable. And when all you had to give up, all you had to beat was Buddy Hield and what's going to be the 15th pick of the draft.
It's a steal.
You've got to ask yourself, if you're Boston, if we could have a big three of Boogie, Isaiah Thomas, Al Horford. If Isaiah Thomas is your second best player and Al Horford's your third best player, now you're doing something.
Avery Bradley's your fourth.
Jay Crowder's your fifth. Maybe you have to trade Marcus Smart, but now you've got a real basketball team. And you wouldn't have even had to give up the Nets pick, which is probably going to be the number one pick in the draft. Like, you could have gotten him for a future pick, like and Jaylen Brown, the kid you were talking about from Cal, like that all trumps what New Orleans did. So why didn't Boston do it? And the answer the only thing that I can come up with, it's the same answer as, why does it seem like I keep hearing the East is so easy, the East is so weak, yet superstars aren't flooding to the East. Yet it's the Rockets who are adding talent. It's not all of a sudden the Wizards are like, we're making a big push. The Celtics are like, we're making a big push. Because they all know they're drawing dead against LeBron. The East is so weak, but nobody wants to come there. Nobody wants to build a super team there. Everyone wants to wait it out. Let's just wait this thing out. Let's not go all in just yet. Boston's 2 games out of first. The Cavs, Kevin Love just had knee surgery, and they're still like, no, let's wait. The teams would rather take their hand at trying to take on the Warriors than take their hand at trying to take on LeBron. Like, there's no reason that Boston doesn't go get Boogie unless they're like, yeah, we still can't beat him. Like, I guess we got to wait a couple more years.
You and I, there's no question, you and I have the same feelings about LeBron.
But he didn't do the dunk contest, Colin.
God, it means nothing. If Babe Ruth was alive today and said, I'm going to pass in the home run derby, you'd be like, of course. You're Babe Ruth.
I mean, I'm LeBron doing the dunk contest. When you were at your former employer, remember when they did the show Dream Job?
Yeah.
I would have loved if you tried out for it.
Yeah.
Hey, Cowherd's afraid. He's not signing up for Dream Job. Like, no. This is over. Like, I've done this. We're good now. But no, I think the East knows what the deal is. And right now, LeBron seems to know what the deal is and is as secure with that. The minutes thing is interesting to me. I'm shocked he's still leading the league in minutes, but he clearly wants to.
All right. So I said the Lou Williams deal. So the NBA hates this tanking. The Lakers yesterday just tanked. Mm-hmm. We're going to give up Lou Williams. By the way, he'll be a nice addition for Houston. I mean, it's a real player for Houston.
The Rockets now have the NBA's 2 leading scorers off the bench.
Yeah.
Eric Gordon and Lou Williams.
No, this is good for Houston. So the NBA should be happy the Lakers said, we just want to retain our number 3 pick. Mm-hmm. We're going to tank.
Yep.
And they should be happy that, Houston's rather interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think San Antonio matches up with Golden State. Houston's rather interesting. So my argument is tanking is actually healthy as long as you've got a direction while you're tanking. I think Lou Williams is a difference maker.
Well, listen.
For 2 teams.
So there's a couple things going on here. All of a sudden, the Warriors had a bad week. In the first round, they're going to have to play Boogie and Anthony Davis now. I looked it up. Over the last 3 years, Boogie and Anthony Davis combined average over 50 points, 20 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 blocks against this team. Right? So that's when they're on separate teams. Second of all, Draymond, in the last 3 years, playing against Boogie, 6 technicals, 1 flagrant, 1 ejection. They don't like each other. Now that's a real first-round matchup. Now the Warriors will beat them probably in 5 games. But there's a physical wear and tear there. Sure. There's a mental. You're gonna have to bang with those guys.
No question.
All right. So there's that. Then the Rockets are an interesting matchup for these Warriors. If you remember 2 years ago when the Warriors won their first title, I guess their one title, the Rockets played them in the Western Conference Finals. That both of the first 2 games came down to the final moments, the last possession. And this Rockets team is better. So that, there are now real obstacles for Golden State. As far as the tanking thing goes, I did an exercise with my kids. I was back in Houston this weekend, and I had my kids. We all sat down, and I said, tell me, in a perfect world, what are you doing 10 years from now? We're going to write it down, and I had them do a 10-year goal, a 5-year goal, and then the last thing I did was, tell me one possession, one item, that if money weren't an object, you would want for yourself within 1 year. And I said, we're going to check back in 3 months, 6 months, and a year. And if you're tracking towards your goals, I'll get you the item. And I did that because I said the biggest thing in life to me is know where you're trying to get.
Sure.
It doesn't even matter if where you're trying to get is the best thing, but have a direction. Yeah. So when you have a fork in the road moment, you can ask yourself, well, which one gets me closer to the destination?
No question.
If you're tanking, at least you have a destination. The destination is let's acquire talent, let's tear it all down. If you're the Rockets, you're going for the title, you have a destination. What's bad for sports leagues are teams that don't know. Are the Sacramento Kings, who in the last 3 years have gone all in with Boogie, all out with Boogie, and by the way, they can't tank because they've traded away future picks. Just have an endpoint. If the endpoint is what Philly's trying to do, great. Or what Philly did, great. If the endpoint is the Lakers, we got to keep this pick. Great. It's when it's we're going to try to be the 8th seed and see what happens. That's where teams and fan bases are actually screwed. And you're never going to have 9 teams tanking. If you have a couple teams tanking a year, you can deal with it.
My biggest problem with the Lakers is they hired Mike Brown, gave him an old roster. He's a defensive coach. They couldn't play defense. They gave Mike D'Antoni bigs. He hates bigs. They gave Byron Scott young kids. He hates young kids. What it told me is they had no direction.
Correct. They didn't know where they were trying to get.
So they were just throwing worse at bad. I think your parenting is actually, this is brilliant. I tell my daughter all the time, pick a lane. I'll support the lane.
Correct. That's young people ask me, and I know they ask you, hey, so how'd you get to where you, whatever it is, like young people in broadcasting. And my answer is you got to work hard. You got to be lucky. There's a lot of things. But the one thing you can control, and the example I use for me is I said when I was 12, 13 years old, I want to be the biggest talk show host in the country. And so if I knew that was the destination, when I was leaving Syracuse, I had 2 job offers. Full-time benefits producer, ESPN Radio New York City. Part-time, $8 an hour, my own show on the weekends in Kansas City.
Take that.
I took that because I knew where I was trying to get. If I didn't know where I was trying to get, it's like, New York City, I have benefits, I have real money.
Then you're trapped.
But then I knew where I was trying to get. The Lakers, it looked like they almost knew where they were trying to get. They had Ingram, they had Russell, they had Randall, and then they spend $140 million on Deng and Mozgov. And it's like, where are you trying to get? If you were trying to get young and open up cap space, you had it. They didn't know their destination.
What are you doing now the rest of the day?
Listening to you, hanging out.
Yeah, that's quite a life.
Yeah. That's good.
I'd recommend that for every American. From this point forward, listen to me.
This is fun. Good to see you,
His
Colin.
name is Nick Wright. Phone number is 866-987-2570, 866-987-2570. Great to have you in on a Wednesday. I'll be on Thursday and Friday. I am holed up in this luxurious studio in Burbank, California, staring at retail property. A big beige office building. I'm in the most beautiful city in America, and I'm staring at an office building. The Herd brought to you by TrueCar. See what other people in your area have paid for the same new or pre-owned vehicle you're looking for. Real pricing on current inventory at dealerships nationwide. Some features not available in all states, probably Idaho. We can't figure them out. Nick Wright was great. So was Chris Mannix. Fascinating guy in about 20 minutes going to come on the show. Wrote a book about John Calipari, one and done. John Calipari doesn't like me right now, and his daughter's ripping me on Twitter. Here is the latest in regards to the NBA trade deadline, which is tomorrow. Here you go. Here you go. This is interesting. Let's get a sound effect. The Indiana Pacers are assessing trade market options for Paul George. Not great, but it'll do. 22.6 boards. I would say older and maybe slightly better than Jimmy Butler, but I'm not sure that's accurate. Kind of the same guy. Paul's a little older. Paul's had a worse injury. Like them both. The Indiana Pacers now here's where it gets interesting. Here's where it gets interesting. For teams considering a trade for Paul George, here's the risk. According to Adrian Wojnarowski, we like to call him Woj, first name basis. As a free agent next summer, he may just want to join his hometown Lakers, the sources told Woj. So Laker fans, think about this. You may get him anyway, not have to give anything up. Want to wait 2 years? I don't. I got a life to lead, Cha-Cha. Julius Randle, Brandon Ingram, that's 24 wins. You know Indiana would only consider the Lakers if they get Brandon Ingram. You give them Brandon Ingram, the Pacers will take your phone call. So George grew up in Palmdale, California. Side note, totally irrelevant, but they filmed a scene in Silence of the Lambs in Palmdale. It's the hangar scene. I've got no life. So here you go. This is what Magic Johnson was brought in for. Get Paul George on the phone. I would give up Brandon Ingram. I would. Listen, if I told you today Brandon Ingram turns out to be as good as Paul George, hell, you'd take that. What if I just trade him for him now? If I told you Brandon Ingram he's going to average 8 points a game this year, and he's getting some minutes. I mean, they're playing him. He's averaging 8. Name the last guy that averaged 8 first year in the league and became a star. I like Brandon Ingram. People say he's like Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant averaged 20 as a rookie. Kevin Durant could rebound in college. I sat next to Brandon Ingram. I like the kid. But that body is not built to put on weight. Remember Sean Bradley? 6 protein shakes, curls, going to bed. Sean Bradley was a Q-tip the day he went in and left the league. Some guys can't put on weight. Durant's put on some. Thank God he's maybe the world's second best shooter. But if you could give up Brandon Ingram and you could get Paul George, of course you do it.
Can I play devil's advocate for a second?
Only if you do the sound effect one more time, then you're allowed to do it. Go ahead.
We were just talking about how trading Lou Williams was a good idea because it would allow them to tank and keep their pick. But if you trade for Paul George right now, you're not going to have a top 3 pick. He's going to win you enough games where that's not going to happen. So do you trade for him now, or do you bank on we're going to have that pick and we're just going to sign him in a year and a half?
You tell Paul, we're going to bring you in. We're going to play you limited minutes. The chemistry's not going to be great.
And just shoot with your left hand?
Mostly. Again, everybody's caught up on these number 1 picks. The first 7 picks in this draft, and it's supposed to be a good draft, are all freshmen. They're all freshmen. Colin, but Isaiah Thomas for the Celtics is good. He's 28. Durant's good. Look at all the guys in the league right now that are difference makers. Durant, LeBron, Kyrie, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Russell Westbrook. 27, 28, 29. These kids coming into the league are like 18, 19. It's a man's league. College basketball's boys. Here's Goulet with the news.
No. Turn on the news. This is the Herd Line News.
That was a smoother toss that time. I think you're getting used to it.
It's the second hour. I feel comfortable.
Major League Baseball has decided to get rid of intentional walks. The league and the players' union have agreed that they're just going to basically have a signal, and instead of throwing the ball 4 times ceremoniously, the batter is just going to get to go to first base. Point of this being to speed up pace of play.
So that'll be this year?
Yeah, that will start this year. It's one of the only things they could agree on. Are you a fan of that?
Yes. I don't think time is the biggest problem for Major League Baseball. I really don't. I think baseball games last year were like 2 hours and 56 minutes. Football games were 3.5 hours. We like football because of the activity. Baseball's issue is not the duration. I mean, let's say this. Average baseball game's 256. Let's say Rob Manfred shaved 12 minutes in 1 year. That'd be pretty remarkable, right? I don't think any other league could shave 12 minutes. So now you're down to 2 hours and 44 minutes. Would kids suddenly love baseball? It's not a time thing. It's in the time you're playing, ban the defensive shift, lower the mound, more base runners, more runs, more plays at the plate, more stolen bases. To me, it's about more activity, not shortening what you have.
There's also more changes that could be coming. There's a weird rule that basically the league can change stuff without the union agreeing to it as long as they give them 1 year notice. So we may hear about a bunch of changes coming for next year, starting before the beginning of this season.
Okay.
In the NFL, Redskins wide receiver Deshaun Jackson will become a free agent this offseason, and he's been hinting that he could be returning to the Eagles. Here's what he said on Adam Schefter's podcast.
It definitely is a great story ending. I mean, I guess you can say, starting your career somewhere and already going to a division rival team and, having the possibility of maybe going back. I mean, you just kind of think about all that, but you started somewhere and maybe want to finish it.
If you were the Eagles, would you bring back Deshaun Jackson to help develop Carson Wentz?
I have no problem with that. In the NFL, it's not punitive. You bring him back, you pay him some money. If it doesn't work out, I think Carson Wentz is going to be a star. I think he was pretty good in spots last year until people got film on him and the offensive line had issues. Like Nate Johnson, I think's the name of the right tackle, got hurt. Say it again.
It's Lane Johnson.
Oh, what did I say?
Nate.
Close
enough.
It's one of those Johnsons.
And finally, Bleacher Report has this video out this morning talking about the level of interest the Redskins would have in Tony Romo.
Yeah.
Now, first of all, the Redskins have Kirk Cousins and have their own quarterback issue to deal with. But let's say, for example, they decided we can't get a long-term deal with Cousins, so we're just going to trade him. We're going to franchise him and trade him or whatever. The question was, would they want Romo? Now, the other problem with that is this. Jerry Jones is not trading Romo to the Redskins. But if, let's say they release him, which they're expected to do you think Romo would have any kind of desire to stick it to the Cowboys?
No. I think
None?
it would. No. I think Tony and Jerry are close. I think it would be an affront to Jerry. The Cowboys don't have to release Tony. They're doing it to be good guys. There's no way you'd spit in Jerry's face. There's just absolutely...
You'd have some kind of handshake deal of you will not sign in this division and possibly not even the conference.
Yeah, I think, and by the way, Tony's going to have suitors. Kansas City, Arizona, Houston, they're all going to look at him. It's all up to Tony Romo. If Tony Romo's reasonable and Tony takes very little money and it's incentive-laden, who wouldn't want Tony outside of about 6 teams, and we all know who they are, I'd love Tony Romo in my camp. as long as his contract isn't prohibitive. Goulet with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Line News.
Very interesting. The Pacers are assessing the trade market for Paul George. So there you go. Paul George is from Palmdale, California. His favorite team is the Lakers. The Lakers hiring Magic is an interesting twist to Paul George's free agent recruitment because Magic has been something of a George family icon going back to his childhood in Palmdale, California. Paul George is 26, averaging 22.5 points, about 6 rebounds, good defender. Had what appeared to be a debilitating injuries, overcome that. Not real happy in Indiana. Let's face it, he would leave Indiana tomorrow, but the way the NBA CBA is structured, he can make more money in Indiana. But, this is one of these things. God, all these guys just chase money. There's got to be more to life than chasing money. What is the difference between $180 million and $198? God, who gives a rip? I know it's easy for me to say, but it can't all be about money. It can't. I mean, the Pacers, it's not a free agent destination. I think the Lakers could make a push for it. I think Boston could also make a push. Let me tell you something. If you're Boston, what could you give? I'm talking Lakers here. This is very interesting. If Boston said, we'll give you the number 1 pick, we'll give you Jay Crowder and Marcus Smart, that may be enough. I mean, I don't know. The salaries have to line up. Boston's got a lot to give. Boston's got a potential number 1 pick. Boston's got multiple B-minus guys. Boston's also got Avery Bradley. And Avery Bradley is going to be next year really expensive, tremendous defensive player. I think he's their second leading scorer to Isaiah Thomas. Boston's got a lot.
They also have the Nets pick next year, which will be another top pick.
So I got to tell you, it's the Boston Celtics, folks. When I read this story, Paul George to the Celtics, Isaiah Thomas, Paul George, Al Horford, that's pretty interesting. If you could move Avery Bradley, a number 1 pick, and a Marcus Smart, if that would be enough, Boston's a player. It'd be good for the league. If Boston was relevant, because right now they don't feel that relevant, Paul George makes them completely relevant. Coming up next, interesting book, interesting thoughts on John Calipari from a guy that knows the program well. Coach Cal's mad at me. That's next. It's The Herd. How much? All right, welcome back. I'm going to bring on Aaron Torres, Fox Sports college hoops writer. He wrote a book called One and Fun, a behind-the-scenes look at the 2010 Kentucky Wildcats. It's called One and Fun. And Aaron Torres is a college hoops writer. And it was funny because we got into talking about Kentucky this week, and I told my staff, give me somebody that's kind of an expert on Kentucky who can be objective. I'm not looking for somebody in Lexington. And they gave me Aaron Torres, who I knew was a college basketball writer for Fox Sports. And the book, again, is called One and Fun. And Aaron's joining us. I was saying this the other day about Cal. The one-and-done thing's interesting, Aaron. We've never had a one-and-done guy lead an NBA team to a championship, although Kyrie Irving was part of the LeBron team that won, but he only won 35% of his games before LeBron. Not blaming him, that's the reality. When you were around the one-and-done culture, were there 1 or 2 things, Aaron, that jumped out to you, good or bad?
Yeah, Colin, thank you for having me. I think every program is a little bit different. We heard these horror stories last year about Ben Simmons, he's not going to class, he doesn't care, this and that, blah, blah, blah. First of all, I think that was a little bit overplayed. I don't think they put him in a situation to succeed. The one thing I would say is that a place like Kentucky, and I know this from firsthand experience from reporting on my book, they treat those kids like anybody else. You have to go to class. If you don't go to class, you're not going to play. And the one thing that people kind of don't realize is that, there's this narrative out there that, once the second semester hits, these kids, they don't even, they don't go to class, they don't show up, they're just there for the games. It's here's the thing, is that if you do that, it hurts your APR and basically get put on probation. So the idea that all these kids are just in school, till the mid-semester break, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, they're skipping out and showing up at games. It's certainly not true at the Dukes, the Kentuckys, the Kansases, the Arizonas. I can't speak to every school, but I think the one thing that's become clear over the last 2 years, and I think it's something you've hit on your show repeatedly, is that Coach K and Cal are really the only ones that have proven to be able to do this time in and time out. You've talked about Washington, you've talked about LSU, and it's clear. We've seen over the last couple of years that what Coach K and Coach Cal are doing is really, really special.
Aaron Torres joining us, wrote the book One and Fun. So Calipari, I had the criticism, and I said, Kentucky's the only national power in college football or college basketball where they don't have one great all-time star player. Kansas has Wilt, UCLA, Jordan at Carolina, Michigan Magic, Ray Allen at UConn. You can't tell the story of the NBA without UConn and Ray Allen. You can tell the NBA story all time without a bunch of Kentucky guys, but Calipari appears to be changing that because I do think Anthony Davis, I really do think he's an all-timer, and I think the kid Karl Anthony Towns is going to be an all-timer. Is it Meta World Peace came on my show 2 days ago, Aaron, brought up a very interesting point.
Yep.
He said, is it possible, Colin, that the people that are attracted to one and done may not be great teammates? That's not Cal's fault. That a kid that's attracted to the glamour and the one and done, I want to be a pro very quickly, may go into the NBA is not really the DNA to be a great teammate. Fair or not?
I think it's a little unfair. I think first of all, and I know Meta's a little different because his son is kind of just coming up and just starting basketball, but here's the truth. I think like the top 200 kids in America think they're all one and dones. Now, they're right. There's like 4 or 5 of them that actually are, but I think 200 of them or 100 of them or whatever all think they're one and done. So I don't necessarily buy that, and I think you look at the case, again, I speak probably best from Kentucky, but, Cal throws out all those stats. Anthony Davis, 5th most shots on my title team. John Wall did this. Karl Anthony Towns put up better numbers in his rookie year in the NBA than he did at Kentucky. I think to succeed in this culture, you have to have the right guy, the guy that's willing to buy in. Devin Booker came off the bench for Kentucky his entire year there. He goes out and averages double figures his first year in the NBA.
Right.
So I think it's fair. I think every case is circumstantial, but I think for the most part, at least at Kentucky, and I would say probably those guys at Duke too that won the national championship a few years ago, you got to be a good teammate or you're just not going to thrive there. And I think Cal, that's one of the greatest things that he does. Not only brings in all these good players, but gets them to buy in. Like you can average 10 points and still go in the first round. I think that is something that's a little bit unique to Kentucky and Cal. And I think it's something he doesn't get enough credit for.
His book is One and Fun, a behind-the-scenes look at 2010 Kentucky Wildcats. We just talked about Paul George.
Sure.
That Indiana may consider looking at offers. I said the Lakers could potentially get in that group, but they'd have to give up Brandon Ingram. Mm-hmm. Go back a year with Brandon Ingram. Here was my knock. People compared him to Durant, but Durant was a rebounder in college. He proved he could be physical if forced to be physical. I would give up Brandon Ingram. I would give him up if I could get a Paul George, because I think if you told me today that Brandon Ingram became Paul George, I'd be really, really happy. Your gut feeling, what is the ceiling for a guy that covers college hoops? When you talk to your sources, what did they think Brandon Ingram would eventually be in this league?
Yeah, I think a lot of people were a little higher on Brandon Ingram than I was. I've been a Ben Simmons guy. I said it earlier. I really think he got a bad rap at LSU. But when it came to Brandon Ingram, it's funny that you mentioned that Kevin Durant comparison, right? Because everybody looks at him. He's got long arms. He's tall. He's skinny, all that stuff. Kevin Durant averaged like 26 points a game during his 1 year at Texas.
Yes.
Brandon Ingram had 25 points one time in his entire Duke career. Now, maybe you could argue he played with a little bit better teammates, this and that, whatever the case may be. But my argument was he was never Kevin Durant. He was more Rudy Gay. He was more in that mold. I think he'll be a good NBA player. I think as weird as it sounds, Colin, and I know this is going to sound crazy, more and more, there are 6'8", 6'9", 6'10" guys that can shoot threes. I'm not saying he's irreplaceable. I never thought he was going to be the transcendent superstar that everybody else did. I would say if you can give him up and get a star, go for it. I think the big question becomes, without knowing Paul George's kind of contract situation, do you think you can keep him, all that stuff? But to me, I've heard you talk about this before, and I'm on board with you. If you can get a star and give up a potential star, I do it every single time.
Okay, Aaron Torres, Fox Sports College hoops writer, One and Fun, a behind-the-scenes look at the 2010 Kentucky Wildcats. So the Lakers want to retain that lottery pick, right? Mm-hmm. And so they trade Lou Williams, and they probably won't get Paul George because the Celtics could simply offer a lot more, including like an Avery Bradley, a Marcus Smart, a number 1 pick. So, I guess when I look at the Lakers trying to retain that top 3 pick, there's a kid at UCLA named Lonzo Ball. Mm-hmm. I've seen him. I like him. There's a kid at Kansas everybody likes right now. Is there, in your opinion, Aaron, a definitive number 1 player?
So I think the consensus is that the kid Markelle Fultz at Washington is, but I've had this argument is I don't want to get into the whole, he doesn't put his team on his back kind of deal, but it's like it's hard for me to believe that a kid that good is on a team that's like 9-17.
Yes.
And again, and that's my only point. Like people want to compare it to Ben Simmons. Like Ben Simmons and LSU were squarely on the bubble for most of the entire season last year, kind of fell apart at the end, whatever the case may be. So to me, I've been a fan of Lonzo. Admittedly, I live here in L.A. I've been watching him probably since he was a sophomore, junior in high school.
Wow.
I think he's the guy. And the other thing, too, that I'll be curious is, UCLA's kind of gotten this Showtime reputation, kind of fast-paced, up and down, this and that. I'll be curious to see if, Magic Johnson, he was hanging out at that Oregon game a few weeks ago, if he just kind of gets in his head that we have to play fast, we have to play loose. I don't know where they kind of stand on D'Angelo Russell. I personally, I would move off D'Angelo Russell,
yes.
But that's just me.
Yeah.
But Lonzo would be my guy, but I still think in basketball circles, the consensus is that Fultz is better long term.
Wow, Aaron Torres. By the way, Calipari got booed last night. I got 30 seconds. I think he likes that, or does he? How do you think that plays with him?
I don't think it bothers him. He's an incredibly good, just like Nick Saban. I know you talk a lot of Saban, at just tuning that stuff out. I just don't think he cares. He's worried about recruiting. He's worried about hopping on a jet to see some kid in New York that neither you or I has never heard of. I don't think he pays attention to it. That's what the great ones do. I think he's kind of in that class.
Aaron Torres, great to have you on the show. We're going to use you multiple times here over the next month there, and if you have time, we appreciate you coming on.
Always appreciate it. Anytime you need me, Colin.
All right, Aaron Torres, Fox Sports College hoops writer, one and fun, a behind-the-scenes look at 2010 Kentucky Wildcats. So the Indiana Pacers are basically saying, yeah, we'll consider moving Paul George. I just think Boston has a lot to give them. I think Boston is in the driver's seat, and I think if Boston gets Paul George, really, really a threat. That is a really, really good team. That makes the NBA more interesting. The SEC needs a number 2 team to Bama. The East needs a number 2 team to LeBron. It's the Herd. This is the Herd. Wherever you may be and however you may be listening, live in beautiful Burbank for the next 3 days on iHeartRadio, Fox Sports Radio, and Channel 83 Sirius XM. Our phone number today, tomorrow, and Friday is 866-987-2570. 866-987-2570. One more time, 866-987-2570. Magic Johnson now owns a part of the Dodgers, owns a part of the football team in town, the soccer team, and is now the president of the Los Angeles Lakers. He is now given the GM job to Rob Pelinka, Kobe's agent. It is a little too star-studded for my taste. Listen, I just don't buy in to the hype. When I moved to Los Angeles, I got nothing against actors and stars, but they're mostly a dime a dozen. The people that last, Spielberg, put in the work. Louis C.K., he's going to last. Jay Leno, they put in the work. That's what I care about. I've been in radio now for 20 years. It's amazing how many times an executive says, let's put that big star on radio. And my takeaway is, going to do 2.5 hours of prep? Because that's what everybody I know who's good does. My thing with Magic Johnson, I don't doubt he's a star, and I don't doubt he'll be attractive, and I don't doubt he's bright. He does have the worst Twitter account next to our president. But my question is, dude, you're going to put in the grind. These scouts and these GMs, they got no life. I mean, they live in a dark room looking at film on their third cup of Joe by 11 a.m. Chris Mannix, senior writer at The Vertical. I asked him about Magic. He feels the same way I do.
Unless Magic is spending his time in the SEC, in the Big Ten, in the Pac-12, covering games, watching games, developing relationships with coaches, he is going to fail. I'm in New York. I'm watching Phil Jackson, who doesn't do that, fail. In Sacramento, Vlade Divac, who doesn't do that, is failing. You can be the greatest player ever, but unless you're at these games consistently and developing the relationships I talked about, you are not going to be good at this job.
I mean, look at the NFL. Pete Carroll can't be GM and coach. He needs John Snyder. Belichick took a wide receiver coach, moved him to GM. He can't do everything. So I just, glitz, glamour, the people who last everywhere, Wall Street, Main Street, Hollywood, they put in the time. There is no secret sauce to these businesses. Spielberg works harder. Peter King works harder than other NFL guys. I used to work with Schefter. He's staring at his phone all day. Is Magic going to do that? Because that's what it's going to take. I think the other story that's very interesting is that it looks like the Cowboys are going to release Tony Romo, allowing Tony Romo to pick the team he wants to play for. And I am on the damn right you get Tony Romo, as long as Tony's willing to be team-friendly on his contract, considering his physical liabilities. And I thought I'd bring on RJ Bell at pregame.com today for 5 minutes to give you some sense of what he means. Now, we've talked about this before on the show. Gronk's not worth a point. Adrian Peterson was maybe worth 1.5. What is Tony Romo worth to the people that make a living betting? So let's bring in RJ Bell. Let's start with this. First of all, where does Vegas think he's going to land?
Hey, Colin. So we actually have odds. The online books have odds on this. And right now, the Texans, Houston Texans, big favorite to land Romo, 2-1. So still an underdog for them as a team, but they're the team with the best chance, Houston Texans. Next, and this would be fascinating, Denver Broncos, 3-1. So Denver second. Now Cowboys are 6-1. There's a chance he stays, and that's what the bet is where will Romo be next year. Cowboys next. Then you've got the Bears, the Chiefs, the 49ers, all in the 10-1 range.
Okay. So let's say he goes. This is what really interests me. Because J.J. Watt gets hurt. The Texans are still number one defensively. He's coming back. They're currently 40-1. Your wise guys, when you said Romo to the Texans, would it move the future bet?
Oh, significantly. And remember, and we'll talk about this with various teams, it's all relative change. That's what matters. The old Vegas joke is, how much was Joe Montana worth? Maybe one of the great, certainly one of the greatest quarterbacks. Oh, about 0.5 point. If Steve Young is his backup. Right. So with Houston, you could make the case Osweiler was the worst consistent starting quarterback, meaning starting for most of the year, the worst quarterback in the league. I think most Vegas guys would have thought that. So to step up to Romo, and again, X factors with his health and all that, it would be a huge upgrade. I would say upwards of 5-6 points.
Per game compared to an average quarterback, he's worth almost a touchdown.
Well, compared to Osweiler. I think which I would say is a slightly, so let's say what average is, right? Average is replacement, meaning the typical backup. So I think that Romo is about 6 points better than the typical backup. Now, let's compare that to Tom Brady. Well, he's got Garoppolo, right? So not the typical backup, so a little bit less. But let's look at Aaron Rodgers, right? A typical backup there, he's worth almost 10 points per game. So, and that's the most in NFL history. We've never had a quarterback worth as much as Aaron Rodgers, and that's because, one, how good Aaron Rodgers is, but number two is how much passing is significant today versus 10 or 20 years ago. So let's call Romo over Osweiler 5 or 6 points.
Okay, so if they're 40-1, Romo's the Texans. What do they go to in Vegas?
They go to about 17-1. That's a consensus. I called around. So just simply, Super Bowl odds for Houston would more than double their chances with Romo versus Osweiler. And just to create a little context, here's the teams that's right around 17-1. The Broncos right now, the Steelers, the Raiders, the Seahawks. So really, they're right in that second tier with Romo. First tier being Pats, Falcons, Cowboys, Packers, all a little bit better than 17-1 with the Pats at 7-1.
Okay, so the Chiefs have Alex Smith. So they're 20-1. So using your formula, Romo to the Chiefs wouldn't change that much.
A little bit, though, because here's where the nuance is. Are we betting them winning the Super Bowl, or are we betting them winning over under a certain number of games during the regular season? So this is fascinating to think. Let's say Kansas City's over under next year for regular season wins, about 9 games. That's what we expect. with Romo, with Smith, I don't think that changes that much. But with Romo, there's a wider range of possible outcomes. To say it another way, there's a bigger upside. So I think the odds do improve for KC with Romo from 20-1, let's say, to 15-1, because there's a bigger upside, though I think the average result is probably pretty similar compared to Alex Smith. Now, the assumption is Alex Smith is going to leave if Romo comes in. Now, Romo gets hurt. Lo and behold, you could win 4 games. So I think there's much wider range with Romo, but a bigger upside for the Chiefs.
RJ Bell, pregame.com. Okay, let's go to Garoppolo. So I'm looking at a sheet you sent me. Bears, Patriots are the favorites to keep him. So let's say he goes to the Bears, current Cutler, Matt Barkley. Right now the Bears are 125-1. How much value does Vegas put on Garoppolo goes to the Bears? What do they change to?
So first off, Garoppolo's very well regarded. This is going to sound shocking after what we saw from Brady in the Super Bowl. But when Garoppolo was healthy in those first 4 games, after having a couple of good games, the sense was, and this is unbelievable, Brady to Garoppolo was about 2 points. Now think about that.
Wow.
That's how much there was questions about Brady, being a little bit older at the time. Garoppolo looked pretty good. So obviously Brady has been upgraded with his performance this year, and hey, he's still there at 39 and all that. But Garoppolo is very well regarded by Vegas. Now here's where it gets complex with Chicago. Right now they're 125-1. With Garoppolo, maybe 100-1, so a little bit of an upgrade. But they still might have Cutler, right? So really, let me ask you, Colin. I mean, you follow the NFL as well as anyone. I mean, is Garoppolo clearly better than Cutler?
I think he's better in the room. I think he's more mobile. I think he's a better teammate. But if you're talking arm talent, not much.
Yeah, so I think the thing is, if it's Cutler versus Garoppolo, a little bit of an upgrade for Garoppolo, but now it's a scenario they don't get Garoppolo, they lose Cutler, and now Chicago might be the worst team in the league. So there's a wide range for sure.
Okay, RJ Bell joined us quickly. One more thing. Obviously, Warriors Cavs are overwhelming favorites to win the championship. How do the wise guys see Golden State Cleveland matching up?
Well, this is, I love absolutes, right? Because in this business, there's so much complexity. But when you can get an absolute, it's fun to say it with a deep voice. Golden State right now, post All-Star break, the biggest favorite to win the title in NBA history at this point of the season.
Wow.
They are about 2, you got to bet 2 to win 1, minus 200 they call it.
So you have to bet $200 to win 100.
Yes, to win the title, win 4 series, one of them likely against the Spurs, one of them likely against the Cavs, and still you got to bet 2 to win 1. Even Jordan and the Bulls in the heyday at this time, after that 72-win season, were not this big of a favor. And we're talking modern era, post-1980, so amazing respect for Golden State. One last thing about the Lakers, if you don't mind,
please,
is I was calling around yesterday, and here's the question I asked. What's the odds of the Lakers winning a title in the next 5 years, right? And one guy said he would give 20-1. They don't. So that's interesting. Is Magic, no Magic? This is a team, 20-1 over 5 years is a sign of a lot of pessimism. But one guy said something I thought was fascinating. The NBA can change with one player, and Magic increases the chances that they sign a Durant if he opts out. They sign a Steph Curry if he opts out. Who knows, right? And I think that is interesting. Very likely Lakers won't be a contender the next 5 years, but with one signing they could be, and a lot of guys in Vegas think Magic increases the chance of that one big signing.
Good stuff, RJ Bell. Good talking to you, bud.
Thank you.
Coming up next, maybe we've been wrong this whole time on something. Plus an update on the trade deadline, Paul George to the Celtics. Not saying it's happening, not saying it's happened. We will update you. Welcome back. It's very, very interesting. According to Woj at The Vertical, the Pacers, Larry Bird runs that franchise, right? So this is interesting. Larry Bird runs that franchise. They're figuring out who possibly they could deal Paul George to. You do realize the two teams that really want him are the Celtics and Bird's former teammate, Danny Ainge, and the Lakers and their current president, Magic Johnson. So Larry Bird's on the phone with Danny Ainge and Magic Johnson. I don't think the Lakers have anything to give him. Brandon Ingram. What if the Pacers don't love him? I mean, I like Brandon Ingram. I think he's going to average 20 in this game in about 2 years. I like him. But, I mean, the Celtics can give you a possible number one pick, Marcus Smart. They can move Avery Bradley. Those are players. The Lakers don't have a number one, a lottery pick guaranteed. It's based on their final regular season record. You got to love D'Angelo Russell. They just gave away Lou Williams' contract. They don't have a lot to give. I just don't. Magic Johnson pulls that off, I'm all in. They don't have anything to give. I think Boston's in a real power position. I think they have picks. I think they have solid B players like Al Horford and Avery Bradley. And I think Paul George and Jimmy Butler, Pacers, Bulls, respectively, are similar players that would make a big difference. I would take Paul George over Jimmy Butler. I think he's a little better shooter. Little better. Chris Mannix was on earlier. I said, do you believe that the Boston Celtics, before the trading deadline here in about 24 hours, will they pull a trade-off with Jimmy Butler?
This is going to come down to the last hours on Thursday. At some point, I really believe these two teams are going to engage each other and decide how far each one is going to go. Everything up until, say, noon Eastern on Jimmy Butler is pretty much irrelevant. I think Boston, Chicago are going to stare each other down before then.
That would help the league immeasurably. Right now, it's a two-team league. Boston, Isaiah Thomas, Paul George or Butler, Al Horford, decent bench, good coach. Interesting. You know, I have this belief on LeBron James. As great as LeBron James is, how many years can he give you leading the league in minutes and 20 playoff games? You know, I talked about this recently. There's a theory in baseball that if you go to the playoffs, it's virtually impossible to win back-to-back because you put so much stress on your starters' arms. They have 3 more, 4 more postseason starts, often starting on shorter days, and that it wears you out. It wears your staff out. It's hard to find back-to-back World Series champs. It's why I actually this year like Cleveland or Boston, although Boston, I don't know what they're going to be post-Ortiz. He gave them a lot of key hits. But there's a feeling that, you know, that Cubs, Joe Madden, they pushed that staff. They pushed and pushed and pushed and got more innings. How long can LeBron give you NBA league leader in minutes and 20 intense games? And by the way, Kevin Love's coming off an injury. J.R. Smith coming off an injury. They may not give you a ton of minutes in the first couple of rounds. I want to throw this out at you. Major League Baseball and the union have agreed to use a dugout signal for the intentional walk. Now, I've been on this for a couple of years. I don't think the length of the game is what hurts baseball. I don't believe cutting it from 256 to 244 gets kids off the Xbox into a baseball game. I think you lower the mound, you ban the defensive shift, more base runners, more action. It's funny, though, about baseball. And we're getting ready for pitchers and catchers to report. Baseball's actually kicking butt. The local ratings lead every market they're in. The World Series playoff ratings, very good. Digital money, through the roof. Team values, through the roof. They've got this one hole, right, though? They don't do well with national regular season TV ratings. But couldn't I argue they probably are spending too much time worried about that? Wasn't it inevitable? Baseball 20 years ago decided to put all their games on TV, therefore eliminating the feeling of special or unique. And by the way, they were paid handsomely for it. So let me just throw this out there to you. If movie studios like baseball, 20th Century Fox, Sony, Universal, Warner Brothers, suddenly decided to allow movies to not only to be released in theaters, but in the same moment online digitally. But they were handsomely paid for it. Wouldn't you understand, as a movie studio, theater business down, digital business up, and between the two, you'd make more money. You just come to realize, we're going to lose a little bit in the theaters. As long as the movie studios paid for both, it's a win. Major League Baseball has been highly compensated, allowing their regular season games to be broadcast everywhere, every night, every time slot. The drawback is, our national ratings have gone down. It doesn't feel special. But they've been compensated for it. Like we all make choices, right? You work more, you see your kids less. You make a decision. If you want to save time, there are ways to do it. 2 pitching changes max. Every pitcher has to face at least 4 batters. You can change the game from a time perspective. But I think sometimes baseball's a little too worried about their national TV ratings because they made a decision 20, 25 years ago, and they have profited greatly from it to just throw every regular season game on TV. The same way if a movie studio said, we're going to put our movies out everywhere, Netflix, the same day as a theater, you would lose theater business. Why lose sleep over it? Goulet with the news.
No. Turn on the news. This is the Herdline News.
So right after taking control, Magic Johnson immediately made a trade, right? He traded Lou Williams to the Rockets in exchange for Corey Brewer, who's kind of irrelevant, and they got a first-round pick out of it. Now, you mentioned it from the Lakers' perspective. They're trying to just basically tank and get some draft picks out of it. But what about from the Rockets' perspective? Does this kind of leap them ahead of the Spurs as the number 1 challenger to the Warriors? That's a lot of scoring they have.
I think it makes Houston capable of beating Golden State on nights. I don't think they beat them 4 times. But they now have the 2 best bench scorers in the league in James Harden. So I think they're like a really, really poor man's version of Golden State.
Some high-scoring games to meet in the playoffs for sure. You were talking about baseball ratings being up locally. Well, NBA ratings locally are way, way down.
Yes, they are.
On average, they're down 15%. But here's the crazy thing. The Cavs, defending champs, down 28%, and the Spurs are down 43%. So 2 of the 3 best teams in the league have 2 of the biggest ratings drops. Are those the kind of numbers that maybe force the league into trying to create some parity?
Well, I mean, if I was Adam Silver, again, the team values are up. I think there's a couple of issues here, and I don't blame Adam Silver. Number 1, the one-and-done culture is tough. Basically, you're drafting 19-year-olds, and it just takes them forever to make a difference. I mean, Minnesota's got 2 absolute home run stars, and they won't make the playoffs. Andrew Wiggins and Karl Anthony Towns are going to be 10-year all-stars, and they ain't making the playoffs. The second thing is 3-point shooting is taking over the league. And the Cavs and the Warriors, between the 2 teams, have like 7 of the best 10, 12 guys doing that. So, like the NFL that's become so dependent on quarterbacks to win, is the NBA becoming so 3-point reliant that Golden State, for the foreseeable future, the only team that can compete with them is the team with LeBron. These leagues, I've said this. You got to be nimble. The NFL changes. I still contend the 3-point line should take the corner 3 and eliminate it.
Just as it's arcing, go to the sideline.
Go to the sideline. So it goes about halfway up the bench, because I've had 2 people in the NBA tell me that when you face the Warriors, it's hard enough to stop Steph at the top and Clay in the angle. But if they can then put Durant in the corner, you can't defend that. And it's just, it makes the game, Golden State's margin of victory, at least a month ago, was like 13 points. That's just, as good as the Bulls were, they were challenged. Golden State on most nights is not challenged.
And finally, do you know what today is the anniversary of?
All right, let me think about that.
February 22nd, in case you're wondering.
Is it a tragedy or something?
It is not. I would not bring up something that sad.
Okay, February. Is it sports?
It is sports. Yes.
February 22nd. This is big, right? Obviously big.
It is big.
So this is the time that we usually have what? February. I have no idea. It's not an Olympic time. It's not. Would it be?
I have an audio clue.
Okay, give me that.
11 seconds. You've got 10 seconds. The countdown going on right now. Morrow up to Schultz. 5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes!
You're on the right track. You mentioned Olympics. 37 years ago today was the Miracle on Ice. Is that the number one sports moment for you all time?
It is the only sports moment that to this day can make me cry.
Still gives. I got goosebumps when I just played that.
Oh no, it's goosebumps every time. You don't. I'm older. We were in a massive depression. Russia was a real enemy. I mean, it was a different time.
Did you watch it? I know it wasn't broadcast live. It was technically tape delay, but did you watch it when they aired it the first time?
Oh, yeah. In fact, I was in a bowling alley in Grayland, Washington, and I heard somebody. I wasn't allowed to go into the bar. That happened later in life. So I walked by the bar, and somebody came out and said, the United States just beat Russia in the Olympics, and I'm a young kid that loves sports. And I basically got home and watched it. It was on delay, tape delay.
Al Michaels had to call another game right after that and had no idea what his call was until he got to the hotel later that night.
God, that is good. Can you play that one more time? God, that was just absolute goosebumps.
11 seconds. You've got 10 seconds. The countdown going on right now. Morrow up to Schultz. 5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes!
God. You know what's amazing about that? For young people listening right now, we had just amateur. We had college kids. The Russian team was the best in the world. The Russian team faced that United States college team like a month and a half earlier in New York City, Madison Square Garden, and scored 10 goals on them. A complete, utter, and I will say this. I'm not a big hockey guy. I like going to the games, but I don't talk about it a lot. The movie Miracle with Kurt Russell, I've told you before, is my favorite all-time sports movie. Everybody talks The Natural, Field of Dreams. That is, to me, by far and away.
Tough movie to do, and they nailed it.
Oh, God, they just nailed it. I may go to an L.A. Kings game. Got me so fired up. Goulet with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
I'm not a big go down memory lane guy, but how ironic is it this? We're talking about the old time. I was talking about that baseball intentional walk thing. Longtime hater of the show, former baseball columnist for the New Canaan Dispatch Telegram, F.T. Tillsworth. You haven't called the show in a while, F.T.
Well, a man can only endure so much of your 24-hour love affair with Tom Brady. But finally, you wised up today and addressed this nincompoop baseball idea about intentional walks and getting rid of pitches so a batter can just trot to first. What's next? They're going to bring out a horse and carriage and just carry the lazy fool?
So baseball wants to speed up the game. You get that. Changes like this were bound to happen. It's a good thing, FT.
Speed up the game. I think we need to slow it down. And the intentional walk was a clearly fine way to do that. Why, any true baseball man knows there's nothing more enjoyable than watching a pitcher throw 4 consecutive gentle lobs to the catcher. But no, you young folks these days need everything fast with your so-called smartphones and Game Boys and instant cook oatmeal. It's an embarrassment. Hey, listen to you laugh. Ha, ha, ha.
You've made your point, FT. I totally get it.
You're not getting me off the horn just yet. I hear you. You know, earlier you mentioned how teams copy other teams and film directors copy other film directors.
Yes, I did. I did, actually. Yes, I did.
Yeah. Well, a smarter comparison would have been pointing out that the great Alexander Graham Bell stole the idea from the telephone from Elisha Gray when he blatantly copied the patent that Gray fired earlier that day.
You don't know that to be true.
You and your audience will get a hoot out of this. I know it to be true, for I was there. The whole chicanery began way back in the year 1876.
Okay, it's not a history show. You got to turn your dial to NBR if you want that. Good talking to you, FT.
Oh, excuse me for trying to educate the dullards who listen to this poor, useful radio show. You know, Cowherd, I would compare you to a cow, but that would be an insult to cows. In my opinion, you are nothing but a no-good loiter sack. Good day, sir.
F.T. Tillsworth, longtime baseball columnist for the New Canaan Dispatch Telegram. He's very, very talented. Calls us about twice a year. Every time I mention baseball, he listens, calls in. Good stuff. So Magic is the new president of the Lakers. How about that? Magic's the new president of the Lakers. Yeah, Chris Mannix from The Vertical, and I agree. Here's the upside. Danny Ainge has whiffed on a lot of draft picks, but he's pretty good in the room on trades. Al Horford convinced him. KG convinced him. Ray Allen convinced him. Isaiah Thomas. Not very good in the draft picks. Danny Ainge whiffed on a lot of picks. Now, a lot of them were 15, 18. They weren't great picks. But he's good in the room. Mitch Kupchak's great with the draft. Bad in the room. So will Magic be able to get a Jimmy Butler or a Paul George to the Lakers? Magic could butcher a lot. If he did that, it's a success. I mean, frankly, if Magic could get Jimmy Butler here, he could say, okay, I've been on the job for a week. I resign. I'd be okay with it. Seriously, if you could get one guy, that's all it takes in the league now. You can't win with babies. Chris Mannix and I talked about that. Does he really want to do this for 7 or 8 years?
Unless Magic is spending his time in the SEC, in the Big Ten, in the Pac-12, covering games, watching games, developing relationships with coaches, he is going to fail. I'm in New York. I'm watching Phil Jackson, who doesn't do that, fail. In Sacramento, Vlade Divac, who doesn't do that, is failing. You can be the greatest player ever, but unless you're at these games consistently and developing the relationships I talked about, you are not going to be good at this job.
Yeah. Kobe Bryant's agent is now the GM of the Lakers. I mean, I'll say this. This is what the Warriors did. They hired an agent as their GM. The Lakers hired Luke Walton, a former Warrior, as their coach. They're going youth, shooting threes, and they bring in a former Laker great Magic to run it like the Warriors brought in Jerry West. So if you're going to copy anybody, you might as well copy the Warriors. And copying, I'm okay with. McDonald's did not invent the hamburger. I'm totally okay with copying. Mark Zuckerberg took the Winklevoss twins' idea and perfected it. And I don't think it's any less brilliant to take an idea that's underdeveloped and perfect it. I think that's brilliant. It's not all about invention. Everybody's copying somebody. The Atlanta Falcons just got to the Super Bowl. How? Their front office is filled with Patriots and their coaches from the Seahawks. Two great football cultures. Letterman was copying and perfecting Steve Allen's bits. J.J. Abrams in Hollywood is taking the playbook of Steven Spielberg, and it's working. So I don't buy that you have to be the first. Very few people are the first at anything. I mean, Kobe was always, to me, kind of Jordan light. When Kobe first broke in the league, when he talked, he sounded like MJ. Phone number 866-987-2570, 866-987-2570. Last chance to get in today. Back tomorrow. Radio only for us. It's fun. Like that music, Goulet? What is that? That is very hot and fresh tracks. What are those? I like it a lot. I can't hear you.
It's not hot nor fresh.
What is it?
Alice in Chains.
Oh, Alice in Chains, Seattle-based. Hopefully heavy drug use. Just kidding, people. Just kidding. Chris Mannix, Nick Wright, Aaron Torres, R.J. Bell. Good stuff today. So Boogie Cousins now is in New Orleans. Boogie Cousins held his first press conference and was asked about his competitive streak.
Just how competitive are you? How much does that go into everything that you do?
About 17 technicals worth.
Listen, Boogie Cousins is a terrific player. Jay Cutler's a really great talent. I just think, I always said with Bobby Knight's on the Mount Rushmore of all-time college basketball coaches, men and women. If he's not on your Mount Rushmore, you've compromised something. John Wooden, Coach K, Bobby Knight, put in your fourth. But Bobby Knight, I always thought was hurt by cable television, is because now you could see him being a bully. And you could see him all over the refs. And dad could see him. And the kid could see him. And mom could see him. In the last 10 years, Bobby Knight didn't want to end up in Lubbock. Nobody chooses that. That chooses you when you don't have options. Okay? So Bobby Knight wanted a Georgia job. Bobby Knight wanted other jobs. Cable TV killed him because you're allowed. TMZ.com has been bad for jerks. Cable TV, social media, Facebook and Twitter. I mean, I know this for fact. I know somebody in the HR business, and they monitor Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. They're not going to look at your resume. That is your resume. So there's so much transparency. I've said this about Keith Olbermann, super smart guy. But we just got out of the most volatile election of my adult life. Nobody hired Keith in the middle of it. What's that tell you? Like Boogie Cousins and Jay Cutler, people said, pass. Boogie Cousins is the best big in the league, and he ends up in New Orleans. That sums it up. That sums it up. 866-987-2570. I had Aaron Torres on earlier. Aaron's the Fox Sports College Hoops guy. He wrote the book One and Fun about John Calipari. I was saying this earlier today, that because of the one-and-done culture, you used to get a Tim Duncan or a Patrick Ewing, and they'd played college basketball for 3 or 4 years, and they were men. They had men's bodies. Now you get a 19-year-old, and a lot of times a stretch four, they're boys. Like, they need 25 pounds. And I got nothing. I think Brandon Ingram is the most talented Laker. Long-term most talented. I think Julius Randle's ceiling's about 15 a game. He's athletic. He hustles. He's a limited player. He's a B. I think D'Angelo Russell, don't love his body. Not sure how focused he is. Good handles, can shoot long. I think he's a tweener. I think he's half point guard, half shooting guard. Good player, never going to be a superstar. Superstars unveil themselves very quickly. I think Larry Nance Jr. on a good team's the first off the bench. Good length, can shoot a three. Jordan Clarkson, athletic, second guy off a bench on a good team. The second-round center, Zubac, I think he's another guy. 3 years from now, he starts in this league. Good hands for a big. Brandon Ingram's the one guy, all right, he's going to be the star. And I think Brandon's going to average 20 points in this league. But when I sat him down, and he was on my show, and I sat there and watched him in his skinny jeans, and I'm thinking to myself, you can't add a ton to those wheels. Like, he's not, his base, he's thin. I mean, you can sit in a weight room and do curls and lat pulls, and you can work on your legs. That's what he is. Even if you added 20 pounds, he's thin. That's what he is. And I don't think he's going to be as good as Durant. I don't. I think he'll end up being a 20-point-a-game guy, fun to watch, good player, maybe more than that because the league moving toward the three. But I had Aaron Torres on earlier, and I asked him, would you trade Brandon Ingram for a Paul Pierce or a Jimmy Butler? I would do it in a second.
Funny that you mentioned that Kevin Durant comparison, right? Because everybody looks at him, he's got long arms, he's tall, he's skinny, all that stuff. Kevin Durant averaged like 26 points a game during his 1 year at Texas.
Yes.
Brandon Ingram had 25 points one time in his entire Duke career. My argument was he was never Kevin Durant. He was more Rudy Gay. He was more in that mold. I'm not saying he's irreplaceable. I just never thought he was going to be the transcendent superstar that everybody else did. If you can get a star and give up a potential star, I do it every single time.
Think about this. If I said to you, Brandon Ingram will be as good as Paul George, you'd all take it right now. I mean, Paul George is 85% of Durant. You'd take it right now, and he's 26, and you wouldn't have to wait 4 years. So, in most of these instances, I'll give up the young guy in the draft pick for the player. I mean, the idea that Boston's paralyzed by not giving up that number one pick, I'd do it in a second. If you could give me a 26-year-old, 23-point-a-game guy in the NBA, I'd do it in a second. I also think it's easier on a staff. Young guys are a lot of work. D'Angelo Russell in Los Angeles, Jordan Clarkson in Los Angeles, Julius Randle in Los Angeles. The lifestyle here, it ain't Indy. It's not Sacramento. A lot of pretty girls. 13, 14 Kardashian kids. They'll end up dating one of your small forwards. There's a lot of distractions here. You walk around a mall in Los Angeles, it does not look like a mall in Boston. So I think you bring in a veteran NBA player, been around the league, made his money. He wants to win games. You don't have to worry about, is it the girls? Is it the money? No, he wants to win games. Paul George now wants to win games. That's what he wants to do. Jimmy Butler wants to win games. I don't have to. It doesn't. My staff's not babysitting. All right, that was good stuff today. I did radio only. Kind of a slob right now, not dressed up. Wearing ratty jeans. Had a great time. I'd like to thank Burbank once again for providing quite a view. I am looking at retail space and a beige office building. And I'm in the most beautiful city in North America. And an old Plymouth Dart or something. So it is a transcendent view here. And Goulet, I appreciate you doing the update, Goulet.
Yeah, you got more comfortable with it as we went along.
Yeah, I was very uncomfortable. Thought about a blonde wig in the first hour, but I'm very comfortable now with you doing the update.
They didn't want to pay anyone else the next 2 days.
I know.
It's me again.
Yeah. I asked for some big stars. I got Goulet. Shush. It's like rations. What's going on here? All right, we'll see you tomorrow on Friday. It's The Herd.